we lost the screen. Welcome to the monthly webinar every first Tuesday in month. Today is 2nd December, Tuesday. We are running a summary of the main activities during the previous month, and the title for the Internet governance in November is Bubbling Cauldron. Quite sort of vivid title for the webinar describing the developments in November. I will ask now Arvin for the next slide, please. Okay, this is the illustration, and here you can see some bubbles, including the main topics that we'll discuss today. But this metaphor is really interesting and telling, because it is getting hot. It is a big soup. We don't know what will be the quality of that soup and how it will taste, and the final moment for the preparing it will come in 2015, and we'll have to then eat it next 5 years at least till 2020. Therefore, it's quite important and formative phase, as we'll see, discussing summaries of November activities. Next slide, Darwin. Okay, November is, generally speaking, in diplomatic activities the busiest month, because it is still within the activities during the year, but preparing gradually for the end of the year and summing up of the main developments. Now, what we'll do today, we will basically go through the list of major policy developments and major policy events in November 2014. Major policy developments are those events that have a broader impact on the political space. And the first one, as you can see, is the ITU Plenipotentiary meeting, which was held at the end of October, beginning November in Busan, South Korea. On last Friday, we had a webinar on the major developments at the ITU Plenipot, and one of the conclusions was that there were no unexpected developments with regard to the ITU mandate in the field of Internet governance. Basically, more or less, all major resolutions were repeated, and some sort of tacit deal is that the current dynamics continue without any major attempt to change the dynamics, as it happened, as it was tried in Dubai in 2012 during the meeting at another ITU meeting in Dubai. Well, the next major development, as you can see, there were a lot of happening in Asia, was the US-China trade talks and the agreement to have the new ICT elimination of duties on ICT products. It is important for the ICT, but it is also highly relevant for WTO, because it will bring a new dynamics in WTO activities. It was agreed during the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting, and the two key players were United States and China. Basically, they agreed to conclude this meeting. Now the discussion will move to Geneva, and it should be streamlined in the WTO activities, mainly through amendment of the 1996 WTO Information Technology Agreement. Now, the commentators are focused on the few developments. Some argue that we have a new internet policy, a digital policy duopoly with China and Asia, but mainly China focusing on hardware development, and the United States focusing on software development and internet products. Therefore, there were some arguments that internet governance will be driven by sort of G2. Now, while we're in China, there was interesting development that ETNO, European Telecommunication Organization, also visited China. And you will see later on why these dynamics around Asia and China is important, because China also hosted the World Internet Conference. The third major development was related to net neutrality. Net neutrality is old and existing topic. It has been discussed internationally, nationally. What was the major breakthrough was Obama's push towards stronger net neutrality and versus mainly U.S. telecom industry, and they were a bit surprised. He even made, in his speech, made a proposal to reclassify the internet communication and to provide it stronger regulatory protection, net neutrality, by having it reclassified as telecommunication facility. That will open many boxes. I hope not Pandora box among them, because if it is reclassified in the United States as telecom facility, the question is, does it mean that it should be reclassified as telecom facility in other countries on an international level? And then again, the question of the role of the IT or the major telecommunication institution will come into the focus. Generally speaking, we can expect a lot of policy frictions around this development, around this really, I would say, positive statement by Obama President Obama when it comes to the future of the internet, but it will raise strong opposition mainly from the telecom industry. Switzerland, we had also discussion in Switzerland on net neutrality, and it was more moved to some sort of old Norwegian model that telecom operators should regulate it themselves, and if they don't regulate it, they don't protect net neutrality themselves, then regulators should step in. And I think it's quite a sensible bottom-up and reasonable approach. ETNO, European Telecommunication Organization, issued a few statements and trying to influence basically the new European Commission to act more in favor of their proposals, which are not net neutrality friendly. And it's interesting that they brought security arguments. In the past, they had used economic, technical argument, but now they are basically bringing in security argument, arguing that European Union has to provide special protection for the telecommunication organization because of their security relevance for the European Union, basically arguing that telecommunication infrastructure is a part of critical infrastructure and it cannot be managed by companies outside the European Union. It's very interesting proposal, I would say, not in the sync with the developments in the global economy, especially increasing liberalization. And it's in a way a contradiction that ETNO on one side is trying to protect its European market, but on the other side it is trying also to dismantle net neutrality method approach within the European market in order to have more freedom to sell the different internet services. The next development, we are still in Europe, is a European Parliament resolution, a call on the regulators to break up Google. As you know, Google doesn't have many friends in the European Parliament, but good news for Google is that European Parliament cannot force regulators, in this case European Commission, to start anti-monopoly process and to break up companies. It is proposed. But it has a significant political relevance, and we can expect that the new Commission will be under increasing pressure to do something with Google's market share in the search engines and then other activities. Therefore, Google will have to strengthen its lobbying capacities in Brussels, where the main issues will be discussed in the forthcoming period. The next major development was around Net Mundial initiative. As you know, Net Mundial was held in Sao Paulo in April this year, and there was a proposal by three major players, ICANN, CGI Brazil, internet regulator from Brazil, and the World Economic Forum to start Net Mundial initiative as some sort of follow-up to Net Mundial meeting. Basically, follow-up which should implement the major conclusions from Net Mundial meeting. There have been many questions and there are many open issues about this initiative. One of the major concerns is the architecture of the proposal, and with WEF being the more, let's say, top-down institution, although they have some bottom-up initiatives, and concern that it may conflict with the predominant ethos of the internet is trying to be more bottom-up and inclusive medium, and its governance of the internet should be done in that way. Therefore, it was the main criticism. ISOC came with a rather strong statement and decided to stay away from NetMundial initiative. Civil society, including DiploFoundation, provided very support with quite a few questions and caveats, including the evaluation of the process over the next few months. Now, it is still unclear how it will develop, and is it going to take off, and in what form, and how it will function in the forthcoming period. There is the gap that NetMundial is trying to fill, is the gap in dealing with so-called orphan issues and helping countries to follow internet governance developments, which is the development which also there are some other proposals how it can be done, possibly with strengthened internet governance forum. Therefore, the issues are in the flux, but NetMundial initiative is one of the approaches. What is very important is that the Deputy Director of World Economic Forum, Richard Summers, clearly indicated that it is one of the initiatives. It is not the initiative when it comes to the internet governance. The last major development was IANA transition. The cross-community working group had a meeting in Frankfurt on the 19th and 20th of November, and they drafted a draft transition proposal, which is now open for comments and discussion, basically highlighting the main guidelines how the transition should be made, along the lines that what has been working well should be preserved in the functioning of ICANN and the overall system. Next slide, Arvin. Okay, there were also the major policy events in November. World Internet Conference in Wuhan in China, which was held between 19th and 20th of November. It was the first major event organized in China on internet governance, as its title says. It's called the World Internet Conference. It was attended mainly by Chinese internet elite, policy elite, owners of Alibaba and other big companies. And what was underlying message that the conference was, in a way, the main function was to signal China's future role in the global internet governance. Basically, the message is China is a big player, it has the biggest internet community, it has one of the most vibrant internet economies, and it wants to play a more prominent role in the way how internet is governed on the global level. And that was one of the main messages of the Wuhan conference. In Geneva, we hosted the Geneva Internet Conference on the 18th and 19th of November. And the main approach of the conference was to try to go into the details when it comes to the internet governance processes, multi-stakeholder, multilateral, and other processes, because we noticed in the preparation for the conference that there is a lot of ideological tension, and basically between two camps, one arguing for multi-stakeholder, another arguing for multilateral approaches. And what he said, the best way is to look into the concrete issues and how internet governance is approached, and through the, in a way, dissection of the major issues, whether it is related to processes, whether it is related to question of transparency, drafting, e-participation, we can find the building blocks in order to help reassembling the internet governance building in 2015. It was the major approach. Therefore, we dissected the major processes and came to the concluding documents with 10 messages, 10 internet governance messages from, we call it Geneva message, focusing on the mapping, transparency, drafting, capacity development, evidence-based policy making, and you can visit and consult this message on our website. Last week, the UN Commission on Science and Technology for Development had a meeting, its intersessional meeting in Geneva. And one of the major issues was the mapping of the IG internet governance processes. It raised a lot of attention and inevitably a lot of controversies, because the question of the mapping has been one of the hottest issues. And in the document, draft document, which I participated in drafting partially, different delegations so that what they wanted to see. Some argue that the document presents the situation which arguing that there are no sufficient mechanisms. On the other side, those the other delegations argue that there are sufficient mechanisms. But one good news for the document and the exercise was that it attracted a lot of criticism from both sides, and it is probably one of the elements that could help arguing that we are on the right track. And the meeting was concluded that the CSTD Secretariat used the right approach by dividing internet governance in 7 clusters, 40 internet governance issues. The process is open for the comments on the document and the database. We identified 648 mechanisms in the database. Therefore, please send your comments to the CSTD Secretariat. The deadline is the end of the year. In January, the new updated document will be prepared and considered at the next ministerial meeting of Commission on Science and Technology for Development. Next development is the OSCE meeting in Vienna. OSCE is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, including beyond Europe also Japan, United States, and Canada. And it was one of the major organizations which bridged the differences during the Cold War. OSCE and the Swiss chairmanship hosted a meeting discussing the confidence-building measures, implementation of confidence-building measures, which were adopted last year in December 2013. And it's one of the first examples of the confidence-building measures in the field of the ICT adopted by international organizations, mainly aimed at diffusing the possible conflicts. The meeting argued that strongly for the protection of critical infrastructure, involvement of business community, academia, and other players in discussion on the cybersecurity. And today and tomorrow there will be Internet Governance Forum meeting here in Geneva. There are new members. There is discussion about the participation of IGF in Net Mondial initiatives, and making more advancements in the preparatory process for the next IGF 2015, which will be held in Brazil. Therefore, there is a sort of sense of the need to do something to improve the internet governance forum processes and to have more tangible outputs. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, as I indicated, the IGF open consultations in December, and they will be finishing tomorrow. There will be a Global Cyber Cooperation Summit on between 3rd and 5th of December in Berlin. As you can see, December is not going to be that busy, and as busy as November was, and it will be probably the right time to reflect on the major developments. We at the Geneva Internet Platform are going to prepare the summary of the major developments in 2015. As you know, we hosted monthly webinars, and there will be some sort of small survey, and even I would say call for the voting about the most important events, IG events in 2015, most important personality, most important issue in the field of internet governance. Therefore, we will be sending shortly some sort of summary message about the major developments in 2015. Now, I will pass the floor to you for comments and questions. Okay, we have a comment from Mike. Hi, Mike. I don't know if you're in Geneva or the IGF or in Washington. Mike's comment is, Jovan, as usual, you have provided a great tour the horizon. I'm an IGF MAG member. Great, that's good way of strengthening IGF. Right now I'm 500 meters up the road at the ITU. Okay, you answered my question. For the IGF Brazil planning meeting, I would be curious to know what themes you think IGF 2015 will or should focus on. Lots of competing ideas. Okay, at the IGF meeting. Well, one thing that we experienced in preparation for Geneva Internet Conference is that it is very, very difficult to to have the certain set of ideas long in advance because the developments are so dynamic. And if you can recall our meeting in Istanbul, we had to adjust our approach from Istanbul, which was beginning of September, till November in order to reflect the changes. But if you ask me to use the crystal ball exercise, I would definitely focus on the question of net neutrality. It is going to be the major issues, and I would say safe bet for 2015. There will be also the question of the link between IGF and development. I think it's good that Brazil will host that meeting. And we can visualize what will happen in 2015. There will be huge build-up towards the sustainability development, adoption of sustainability development goals at the end of the year. Therefore, that meeting will be happening more or less in this context. Therefore, second point will be this link and mainstreaming on IG and Internet into some sort of sustainable development goals. Obviously, IANA transition question with all its facets will be on the agenda. Therefore, I would say if I had to choose 3 points, it would be definitely net neutrality, mainstreaming internet policy issues into the sustainable development context, and generally speaking, IANA transition-related issues. Success of IANA transition, or partial success, open issues, and that would be my bet. Okay, Mike comment is, I think one of the most important developments in the internet has been one of the most overlooked. The major email providers have decided to start using encryption for which they don't have keys. Huge implication. Yes, Mike, definitely. And one of the Phil Zimmerman moved to Geneva. His office is, well, 1 kilometer from the Geneva Internet Platform. And one of the reasons why apparently he moved his office is the data protection regulation in Switzerland. And we are seeing more and more companies moving with their servers generally to Europe, Switzerland, and Germany. And I agree, yes, this is the key issue and possible solution. And I would extend my list of the 3 points to your point of the balance between data protection, cybersecurity, and encryption. And what I suggest is, if you have a time, I know we are overloaded with information, but during the Geneva Internet Conference, we had a very interesting session on data protection and privacy, where we gathered people from human rights community, diplomatic community, commercial community, and we had somebody else is missing the standardization ITF, and we had one chair which was empty chair because we couldn't get anyone from the security community. Therefore, what Vlada as moderator asked people to envisage a possible comments from the security community. And there is a legitimate concern, and I would say the best and most optimal way to address this issue, including encryption, is to bring all peoples around the stakeholder into the frank and open discussion. There are security concerns. They cannot be overruled easily. They are related to the key security issues of modern society. Therefore, these people should be around the table. But we need to have somehow, somewhere, inclusive and open discussion and the right balances, check and balances, transparency whenever it is needed. That's the most important aspect. Thank you, Mike, for bringing it. Okay, encryption and backdoors. Excellent. Mike is saying, I will watch your webcast. You should also watch the amazing webcast from last night. ISOC DC panel on encryption and backdoors. Very well done. Thank you, Mike. We'll also distribute information about this event to our community. We had yesterday a very interesting event with the telecom companies and the Global Network Initiative and the Telecommunication Industry Dialogue. There were about 60 or 70 people in the room here in Geneva, including companies, major companies. And these days we are tired of IG events. You have so many of them, but I really learned a lot because companies were explaining what type of pressure they have from governments and how they react, how they can be transparent and translucent. Because as you know, Vodafone started preparing reports. They issued a report on the request for the data. Microsoft is working on it. Google has a long tradition in it. But it was really amazing how, when you see their perspective and their concerns, you get a more nuanced view about these dynamics, apart from the regular blame game about the industry and companies. These people, they want to be good citizens, most of them. They also want to have money, to make money, to make a profit. They have to protect their people, which was interesting. Quite a few of them highlighted that when they publish the request for surveillance in some countries, their staff is exposed to the pressure. That was amazing discussion, and we'll probably publish it next week together with the GNI. And for me, was really enriching experience to see that perspective, which sometimes is underestimated. And as one of the participants said, I would say rightly so, is that he highlighted that companies like Microsoft, for example, which is challenging in the court decision of the US government, are putting quite a lot at stake, because challenging such one of the most powerful government in the world is not that easy. You know, the Microsoft is challenging US government on the decision for the submission of the data hosted on their servers in Ireland. So that's an interesting perspective, business perspective on the overall issue on the surveillance, data protection, and encryption. João Carlos Caribe from Brazil. Did I pronounce correctly his name? Could you? João. Okay, I'm sorry. I have the Brazilian friend here with us in the room. Therefore, he told me. João Carlos Caribe. To keep in record, recently, Brazil telecommunication companies are fueling the debate about the return of data limit in internet access, also in regular broadband access. The terrible purpose here is to cut out the user connection when the data limit was reached, and to continue using the internet, the user must pay extra. Despite the absurdity of the proposal, Anatel, our FCC, agrees with this. This is absurd kicking, and we are reaching the conclusion that they will use this as a bargaining in the regulation of neutrality in the Marco Civil Act. I'm seeking to know if this telco strategy is ongoing in other countries. Oh, it's really interesting, João, that we thought somehow, I had the impression that net neutrality discussion was closed with the adoption of Marco Civil Act, but you just revealed that it is not over, and it will be reopened. I can tell you some reflections from the European Union discussion, where ETNO, European Telecom, well, not Anatel, but Association of Telecom Operators in Europe, they're really stepping up their arguments and battle against net neutrality by moving the shift in discussion to the security concerns. It's interesting, not only more economic, but security concerns, arguing that European security, overall security, geostrategic security, is endangered by possibly allowing other companies outside Europe to manage telecommunication infrastructure in Europe. I can see, João, that we'll have a lot of fun during the IGF 2015 in Brazil, because this issue will be still on the agenda. Thank you, Mike, for the link, and we will also distribute the link from yesterday's session with GNI. And I will pass by the IGF and we can have a coffee later on or tomorrow. Is there any other question or comment? No questions or comments. Therefore, okay, great. Same as Mike. You will be receiving the summary from the major developments in 2015, and we'll invite you to vote for IG event, the leading IG event in 2014, the the leading personality. I can see that there will be quite tough competition. The major issue, according to your reviews, and there will be a few other questions. And while we are moving into reflective mood of the end of the year and holidays, Christmas holidays here in Europe, and that's more or less all. Joao, thanks, Jovan. I think the telco moves from one approach to another in order to move forward in their intention to increase profit. That's clear. Mike, Chinese telecom officials are in DC this week. The Chinese internet star Wei Lu is getting lots of attention. Mike, this is an interesting development, and some argue that there is a sort of internet governance G2 with China and the US as the main players, with most of the internet industry hosted in these two countries, with a huge internet users community, and that's an interesting development. And we will thank you for alert about Wei Lu's visit, and we'll follow it carefully. From Oksana in Adobe, did you I guess in Kiev it's written in Adobe? Did you discuss Wuzen in Geneva? No, because it was happening in parallel. And we had many other issues related to internet governance. Therefore, that was, but it wasn't discussed. But we were asked what was different between Geneva Internet Conference and World Internet Conference, except in the title. And I think that also reflects we had much more modest approach and expectations. We focused on the concrete issues. We didn't have a big stars like they had in China, like honor of Alibaba. But we had a lot of prominent personalities, especially the event was opened by one of the leading actors in internet governance, Mr. Fadi Shehadi. We have two fathers of the internet, and a lot of bottom-up discussion, inclusive discussion on the way how to address these issues on, let's say, transparency, check and balances in internet governance, how to draft in multi-stakeholder space. What are the real limits of using e-participation? That was the main approach. Okay, Mike, thanks for these two links. We'll read it carefully and probably provide comments for the discussion. Okay, if you don't have any other question, I would like to thank you for joining us today. And we will be okay. Okay, here's we will follow up with a message and this exciting summary of 2014 and the selection of the major events, personalities, and the issues that were discussed during this really busy and decisive year in internet governance. I wish you a nice and pleasant day. For those of you who are at the IGF, I wish you a lot of useful discussion in the preparation for the IGF Brazil. All the best. Bye-bye for now. Ciao.